So hello and welcome back to the Unforced Error. We're here today to close out the summertime with a preview to the US Open. The last major of the year takes place in New York City and starts off tomorrow. So an exciting 2 weeks ahead as we move in to the autumn time. There's at least an exciting 2 weeks in store to ease the end of the summer blues. So yeah, it's kicking off tomorrow. When you look back in the tennis here, it's been a combination of probably the top players of one and two seeds in particular on the men's and women's side, developing into a real rivalry, and also kind of people we probably weren't looking at as in close detail last year coming out, and the likes of the Wimbledon finals as well there, and the women's side in particular. So it's always great to have a combination of the top players performing really well consistently, and also seeing people come out of relatively nowhere to us. But of course, everything is a lifetime work for these players. Yeah, we're going to start off with the men's side this time. Break it down quarter by quarter, see if we can learn it, and see if we can get any closer to trying to figure out who's going to win it. Yeah, so as I said, it's a real party atmosphere in New York. It's one of the biggest stadiums, the Arthur Ashe Stadium, in tennis, if not the biggest arena in tennis. And we're also celebrating the 50 years. The WTA's celebrating equal prize money that's been in place for 50 years now at the majors. I think the US Open was, in fact, the first one. It's great, and Billie Jean King, no doubt, will be there at so many of the games. So a very important milestone to celebrate as well. So we'll start off with the men's side. The obvious answers, the overarching teams, is number one versus number two. Novak Djokovic, at the age in his mid 30s, still going strong against the kid who was far from a kid, Alcaraz, who is a defending champion. And as funny as that is to say, it is the first time he's coming into a major as defending champion, but it certainly won't be the last. But I think there's more going on. That rivalry has probably captured people's attention this summer between the Wimbledon final, the French Open semi-final, even though it was a preview without being a preview, and then the Cincinnati final a few weeks ago was another classic. But I think there's a lot more going on in men's tennis than just those two players, as great as it is to have a great rivalry at the top. I think there's a lot more other people to be watching out for as well. The likes of Rublev, Medvedev, Sinner, Berrettini. Of course, the Americans had a great run at this competition last year, and in front of their home crowd, there's always an added pressure. But that crowd support. You look at the likes of Francis Tiafoe, who had a very great breakout last year, and what that did to his career. So we'll break it down quarter by quarter. The first quarter, number one seed Alcaraz, defending champion. You've got Dan Evans. You've got Greg Spoor versus Fee in the first round. A great game there. You've got Cameron Norrie, Zverev, who's finding his form again after injury, and it's taken a while to probably get that match sharpness back, but I really do believe he's got it now. Altmaier's had a great season. Andy Murray still going. Dimitrov, Echeverry, Stan versus Nishioka is another great first round, and Sinner to end off that quarter. So that's a very stacked quarter, not just because of Alcaraz and Sinner, who would be your obvious picks for a great quarter final. And that's another rivalry that's kind of developed, but probably not as high profile as the Djokovic one, because often it's happened mid-tournament rather than in the finals. But Sinner can really take it to Alcaraz, and we've seen that before. Dan Evans, always very solid. Cameron Norrie as well. Daniel Altmaier has had a great year, the German player. And Andy Murray, he's playing Mulev in the first round, and you can always rely on him to provide entertainment. And as I said, no one will want to draw him in any game at any time. So a real credit to him after his hip surgery to be still going strong. There's probably still question marks over Sinner. We're probably expecting a lot from him. He's still 21, 22, and I think Alcaraz has probably overshadowed him. But there's still question marks as to whether, if he can beat Alcaraz, how far can he go. Zverev is back. Echeverry's had another great game, another great year. Has made the quarterfinals of the French, and a very tough player to go. And Stan Wawrinka as well, still going strong. Altmaier and Stan Wawrinka have both at various points in the year have broken down after games. One in which they won and one in which they lost, and just simply said in the interviews after that they love tennis and that's why they outpour in emotion. So it's great to see. Stan Wawrinka is a journeyman at this stage, but people not in the spotlight, but still putting on great long games, giving it their all and just portraying their outward love for the game. Second quarter then, Daniil Medvedev, who won it back in 2021. Purcell versus O'Connell is a great first round game. You've got Coric, you've got Nicholas Jarry, de Minaur, Khachanov, John Isner, who is retiring after this US Open, Hubert Hurkacz, Berrettini, Monfils, Rublev. So that's another very, very solid quarter. As I said, Medvedev beat Djokovic to a calendar slam here in 2021 in a great final. Now, he hasn't had a lot of success against Alcaraz, and he is in that half of the draw. But if it's not Alcaraz he's facing, a lot of wins or a lot of things have to be put in place for that matchup to happen. If that doesn't happen, it's hard to know what Medvedev. Before this year, you would have always thought hard surface was his best, but he's played well on other surfaces this year as well, but he's also had a dip recently in form, but he's another big time player and will perform when it matters most. And I think he does feed off the energy of the crowd as well, whether they're for him or against him. He usually thrives under those sort of circumstances, and played so well in that 2021 final where the crowd actually turned and were cheering for Djokovic as he was being beat, and that was tough. It was tough for Daniil Medvedev as well, because there's a lot going on there with the calendar slam, and Djokovic had an outpouring of emotion for the first time in a while as well. And so he's so impressive, very impressive on the clay earlier this year, especially in the lead up to the French, but his slam performances probably haven't been where he's wanted to be. But and Rublev is always a tough opponent. He's really fought hard this year, and with the right run, if he can find his form and his rhythm quick, you could see him going to a quarter or semi-final easily enough too. Third quarter, Casper Ruud, runner-up last year. Korda, Manarino, Francis Tiafoe, Tommy Paul, Fokina, Bublik, Thiem, Shelton, Rune, and Carlos Baena. Another a great quarter. Casper Ruud has been quiet outside the majors this year. Had, of course, made the French Open final. Does like this hard surface, as I said, made the final last year. Would probably fancy himself to get out, but Francis Tiafoe loves the US Open, and there'll be a lot of attention and crowd behind him. Tommy Paul's had a great year again as well, and be interesting to see can the home crowd spur him on a lot. Then the final quarter, you've got Tsitsipas, Eubanks, Musetti, Fritz, Felix, Cerundolo, and Novak. Tsitsipas, it's been a tough year for him, a very up and down. He's had a change in family and coaching situation there recently as well, which probably hasn't helped, but it's probably the best decision for him in the long term. Chris Eubanks had a breakout year. The US will be behind him. Musetti, Taylor Fritz, really interested to see how he goes. There'll be big pressure on the Americans, a big pressure to be the top American, and he lost in the first round in the US Open last year, and that was tough for him. And he talked about the Netflix documentary trying to treat every game the same, when you're on tour throughout the year. And Jessica Pegula talked about this. We'll get on to her as well, but he said it's not the same. The majors do have that extra weight, and he probably felt that weight of expectation last year. But the pressure, the attention will be somewhat off him from the outside world. Now, how much pressure he'll put on himself, it remains to be seen, because his slam performances probably haven't been as good as he's liked. But he is playing well, and if he can find his form, he will give anyone a game. And Then finally Novak Djokovic got a pretty nice draw. You would fancy him to come out. The first couple of rounds were relatively easy, but he will have eyes on the other side of the draw, and you never know. These things are never guaranteed. As good as he is, um, in the final couple of weeks ago, he was suffering with physically in the first set against Alcaraz, with the heat. Now he came back and won it, but you don't know what can happen. There's a lot going on. I think the rivalry with Alcaraz has heightened his ambition and has got his eagerness. Not that he ever lacked motivation, but the calendar Sam is out the window. He's leading the race now. He's 23 Grand Slams, so there's not. He still needs things to keep him going, one would imagine, and Alcaraz will probably provide that for him. And just a word for John Isner, just want to give an acknowledgement to a real journeyman. Has participated, is one of the best serves, the quickest serves of all time. Has participated in the longest game of all time in Wimbledon, and yeah, as I said, outside Djokovic and Alcaraz, Rune will want to have a good one. Sinner will want to have a good one. Medvedev could come to light, and there's a couple of dynamics. Medvedev would have a great game against Sinner. Sinner would have a great game against Alcaraz. There's a couple of different dynamics going on. Depending how the brackets turn out, things could change very quickly. Other than your typical Novak Alcaraz final. Move on to the women's then. I suppose the team coming into this, Jessica Pegula and Coco Gauff, the American hopefuls, have had great runs into this. They've both won tournaments, so there'll be a lot of attention on them, more than there already is. How they can handle that pressure will remain to be seen. So even at the World Athletics Championships this week, if you're watching, a lot of the pressure, we're talking about Iga Swiatek as well, the pressure of being number one, the pressure of being favoured, the expectation of doing well, this does weigh on these people. They are amazing athletes, but they are human beings, and these do take a toll. You saw in the press conference Francis Tiafoe rolling his eyes when he was asked, there's a big thing about when the last American won. And it's been a couple of years now, and he rolled his eyes at the question because he knew what was coming. It's just something to note, I guess, that the pressure does have an impact. And Iga leads off the first quarter. Ostapenko's in there, Kudermetova is in there, Kvitova is in there, Caroline Wozniacki is making a comeback, Jennifer Brady is making a comeback from injury. Caroline Wozniacki was out and had a baby and has come back and is looking good. Magda Linette, Mertens, Collins, Fruitova, Mira Andreeva and Coco Gauff. So that's a tough quarter. There's a lot of great players. Now Iga would probably fancy herself in most of those situations. Now Coco Gauff did beat her a couple of weeks ago, and that turned a large head-to-head against Iga. Iga's beaten her 6 or 7 times before that, if not 7 or 8 times. So that was it's been a huge improvement for Coco Gauff. She's really come of age this year and is really playing with a very level head. She's had a change in coaching situation, seems to have suited her down to the ground. So a lot of people will be tipping her to win this. And she's got the game. Her forehand has increased massively. And seems very gracefully speaks to the media, handles all that pressure, and I suppose has been on tour for a couple of years now, so is no stranger. So it'd be really interesting to get a rematch of that match a couple of weeks ago where Gauff beat Iga for the first time. But as I said, Iga, like Djokovic, it's about the majors, and surely will be a great game. Great to see Caroline Wozniacki back. It's amazing to see, like Svitolina, was out, had a baby, and come back to even physically is an amazing achievement. So quarter 2 then, Rybakina versus Kostyuk, which is a great first round game. Rybakina still seems to not be 100% fit. Otherwise you'd be tipping her to go all the way, but you just don't know with her how fit she is, and if she is fit as the rounds go on, as the games get longer, will she be able to handle it? But that's a really tough first round. Kostyuk will get anyone a game. Ayla Tomljanovic is in this, Kristea, Victoria Azarenka, Bencic, Mukova, Haddad Maya against Sloane Stevens is probably the pick of the first round for me. Badosa was going to play Venus Williams, but Badosa has pulled out. So that's a great game. If either of those get through, they'll want to go far in this quarter. Kalinina versus Tormo is another great game. And Maria Sakkari has had one of her easier draws, but she usually gets a hard one. So she will. So that's a very stacked quarter as well, and lots of people, depending on Rebecca's fitness, will really want to go far and challenge for that quarterfinal spot out there. But yeah, Haddad Maya against Sloane Stevens, that's box office. New York is a city that doesn't sleep, and there'll be little sleep had for everyone in Europe and abroad if you want to see some of these games. But I would urge you to lose a bit of sleep for 2 weeks. Catch up then in the depths of winter, because some games you just can't miss. Quarter 3, we've got Caroline Garcia, Buter versus Parry in the first round's a great game. Potapova, Alexandrova versus Fernandez, Andreescu versus Serenko is another great game. And Andreescu possibly going to play Fernandez then in the second round if that works out. So that'll be a Canadian kind of face-off. Trevisan, Vondrousova, Samsonova, Keys, Svitolina, Georgie versus Pegula. I think Jessica Pegula is really coming to the fore now. She had a great win a couple of weeks ago, although the final happened that day, where the semi-final and the final was played in the same day in one of the cases, so Pegula was a lot fresher, but it doesn't take anything away, and it'd be wondering what that win can do for her. She says she does in the press conference she's not feeling any more confident, and she usually would. She's made so many quarterfinals now, but it's about getting past that quarterfinal spot for her now. But that's a tough quarter to get out of. So, but she's playing really well. She always kind of flies under the radar. Probably doesn't get the attention of Coco Gauff or someone like that. Just kind of her manner. It's a bit quieter, but she's been very, very impressive, and it will be great to see her do well at her home championships. Final quarter then, Ons Jabeur had a tough hangover from the Wimbledon final. As you might imagine, it's been a tough loss for her, and it's not easy to get over these things. But she will be thereabouts, no doubt. Then you've got Zheng, you've got Krejcikova, Kasatkina, Bogdana versus Kenin would be a great game. Fortunately, Badosa's had to pull out again. But Venus Williams got a wild card. Donovac is here, Pliskova, and finally Arina Sabalenka, who's got a better draw than some of her other majors this year. So again, the favourite would be Swiatek, but Coco Gauff will want to stop that happening out of her quarter. Pegula will have a late win. Rebecca, it depends if she's fit, and Sabalenka, well, you never know with her. I would probably tip her to win it if she's fit, but so much can go right, so much can go wrong in tennis. It's really hard to know, and with a game like Sabalenka, it's such a high risk. It's you have to put caution putting money on her as well. But all in all, it's going to be very exciting. There's lots to watch out for. As I said, there's first round matchups there, right from the off, that would get anyone excited. So yeah, hopefully we have a great championships. That's the breakdown. I will try my best to update throughout the championships and try and do a round per round review and preview. So it'll probably first be checking in Tuesday, but it might fall a day either side with the schedule. So yes, late nights for us in Europe. Let's enjoy it. There's a lot going on about the WTA finals later in the year, where they're going to be held, and there's a bit of controversy going on about that, but we'll focus on the present for now. This isn't about the past, this is not about the future, this is about the present. So let's enjoy it, and thanks for listening as always, and we will see you on Tuesday.